Hi, welcome to the long-awaited video that I promised I was going to make. I did say I was going to make this video along the course of my stream, which I do highly recommend watching, although if you find entertainment in other people playing the game, I do understand that as well. But yeah, if you want context, this is A Way Out, which is a game that I ended up playing on PC with my other friend. And this is me talking about the hero's journey between the two main characters, Vincent and Leo. I will be going over their departure, their initiation, and their eventual return, as well as talking about maybe a few other things here and there, like the character archetypes. So, my name is Ella Martinez, and this is A Way Out, A Hero's Journey. We start with the departure, which is the heroes leaving the familiar world. To set this thing up, we have the ordinary world, which is the first stage. This is where we establish the status quo, which is set in a place that's mostly comforting, and it's a familiar place, and it's a place that the hero wants to protect. But if you'll notice from A Way Out, this isn't exactly a place that the heroes want to be in. Both Vincent and Leo they're labeled as criminals, and the game starts with Vincent arriving at prison for fraud and murder, and while there, he's acquainted with other prison mates, but his most notable interactions happen to be with Leo, which is the other player. Provided they're in prison, this isn't really a comfortable place, and so naturally the two want to get out. Now, while establishing the status quo, we also have to establish the characters and who they are. Leo is, I've decided to label as the hero. He's the hero because this is one of the characters that the story mainly revolves around. Now, the story also revolves around Vincent, but I haven't labeled Vincent as a hero, and you'll understand why once we get towards the end. But I have labeled him as a foil, which is a character that's supposed to highlight attributes from another character using opposing traits. Leo and Vincent have a lot of opposite traits to one another. They use their strengths and their weaknesses to help each other out during the events of the game, you know? Well, transitioning to stage 2, we have the call to adventure, where the hero is given the opportunity to leave the ordinary world. This is where they start getting into more of the possibility of traveling on their adventure to their end goal. In the case of Vincent and Leo, their end goal is Harvey, which is a criminal leader who ended up stealing an item called the Black Orlov. Now, given that Leo is trying to get out of prison, you'll think that, yeah, he's going to be accepting the call to adventure in a snap. And that's not necessarily true, because at the time, Leo doesn't know Vincent. And Leo doesn't want to take Vincent with him. In fact, he actively goes out to tell him that he doesn't want him anywhere near him. And that can be an issue. While in prison, we get moments of Vincent and Leo. We get a scene where Leo's getting ganged up on outside, and Vincent is thrown into the fray, so they have to take the gang together. They also get a moment where another prison inmate tries to go after Vincent and Leo with a knife in the cafeteria, and the two have to fight him off. And this starts the transition into stage 3, after Vincent helps Leo smuggle a chisel into the infirmary after that whole attack with the knife in the cafeteria. We get into stage 3, which is their refusal of the call. The hero doesn't want the adventure and is narratively punished for it. And so this means that the story has to force their hand. Now, For stage 3, Vincent offers to help Leo bust out of prison, and while at first Leo refuses the help, he eventually agrees to help after Vincent reveals that he also has a bad history with the main villain, Harvey. Now, we move on to Initiation, which is where stage 4 takes place. Initiation is where the heroes navigate the unfamiliar world, otherwise known as the world of adventure. Stage 4 is crossing into this threshold into the world of adventure. So this means that they have to leave the ordinary world and enter the unknown. Vincent and Leo's escape from their prison is their crossing of the threshold, where everything they did to prepare for the escape during the stages 1 through 3 is finally set into motion, albeit ending with the chase with the scene they must escape law enforcement after pursuing them. And this leads them into stage 5, the realm of adventure. This is where they are actually exploring the unknown, where they encounter allies and enemies, and artifacts abound. For this stage, the pair get started on their own adventure. During the police chase, they set up camp and fish, and this is where Vincent tells Leo about his history with Harvey. He was a banker until Harvey forced him to launder money, until Harvey killed his brother as a warning and framed him for the crime. It's a pretty harsh backstory, but the players get no flashbacks to actually watch the events unfold, and this does become important later on. Because later on, after they survive a waterfall while riding on a boat, Leo reveals his history with Harvey, which does come with its own flashbacks. Harvey had stolen the black diamond called the Black Orlov, and when Leo tried to sell it in the black market, Harvey betrays Leo and kills the buyer, which ultimately leads to Leo's arrest on the scene. Now, about the Black Orlov. The Black Orlov is a black diamond. It's essentially a MacGuffin. And what is a MacGuffin? It's an item that has unknown value, unknown told power. It basically serves no narrative purpose, yet everyone in the story goes after it. We have Leo and Vincent actively trying to obtain the Black Orlov. We have Harvey and his goons trying to keep the Black Orlov with them. And we have the police force that are also after Harvey because they want the Black Orlov as well. We don't know what the purpose of the Orlov is. We don't know where the item came from, what its value is, what the purpose of it is. We don't know anything about the Black Orlov, and yet everyone wants it. So for this sake, we will be calling it a MacGuffin. But we'll touch on stage 6, which is the belly of the whale. This is where we descend into, the hero can either descend into madness, or they mostly just descend into their darkest hour in terms of, psychological experiences. This could also be physical or metaphorical. In this case, their darkest hour is mostly emotional. This stage is set for Leo specifically, though. At a trailer park, Leo was able to finally meet his family, composed of his wife Linda and his son Alex, but since his son had read the newspaper detailing the escape and search of both Vincent and Leo, Alex seems to have a sort of distrust towards his father. Vincent does technically have a moment like this, but it's more so during a time where he finds out that his wife Carol is giving birth to their daughter named Julie. So it's not like he's in a dark place, it's more like he's feeling pressured to get to the hospital to see his daughter for the first time while needing to avoid law enforcement and more of Harvey's goons. And stage 7 is the Road of Trials. This is after they get out of the belly of the whale, and so the events of the story start to test them a lot harder now. It becomes much more difficult, with many new enemies, or many returning enemies, and rivals that are most prominent here. They also have this could also contain a temptation to leave the journey, or, other ideas such as that, but in Vincent and Leo's case, they're not tempted to leave the journey. Getting out of prison means that they understand that they have to go through with their plan to chase after Harvey and the Black Orlov. And so with the Road of Trials happening, that moment falls in line to this with Vincent and Leo's encounter with the assassin hired by Harvey after Jasmine, the weapon dealer Leo bought from, betrayed them and revealed their location. Another moment during this time goes to... during this time, Vincent had gone to see his daughter. During this stage, they're forced to contest with their greatest enemy between both factions that are after them. We have Harvey's faction of men trying to murder the both of them, and we have law enforcement trying to get them back into prison. Oof. Alright, now we move on to Stage 8. Stage 8 is the pre-showdown breather. Everyone gets to calm down from all of the experiences that they ended up going through during their journey, and they get to show off their humanity as well. This is basically the last chance they get to calm down and show off, or not show off, but show their characters before the final showdown. This stage occurs after the escape from the hospital. Vincent drives to the hangar to meet his friend Emily, who happens to be a pilot, and this is where the three characters get to interact, while also helping Emily set up her plane. The players do get moments like these along the game, little breathers here and there where they're allowed to explore the area and are even given little mini-games to play between themselves. But this is the last time that these two are allowed a moment like this, and that kind of makes this special. And then we get into the climax. The climax takes the form of three different ideas. We have the final showdown, the apotheosis, and or the ultimate boon. For the final showdown, the heroes must fight the final enemy. For the apotheosis, the heroes must come to view the world in a new lens with some new knowledge, or they gain a new power off of this new knowledge. And for the ultimate boon, the heroes attain their final reward they've been seeking after all. Now, you could make a case that the ultimate boon could be Stage 9 for the climax, because Vincent and Leo do eventually get the Black Orlov, but I would argue that's not their final reward. But also, it more falls in line with the final showdown because they have to contest with Harvey and his forces. Now, for this stage, this is the penultimate showdown against Harvey. Emily flies Vincent and Leo to Mexico so they could challenge Harvey, and they must get through his whole army of gunmen. This is also a special treat for the players because this is the first time in the game where guns are allowed to be used, and so it becomes a first-person shooter solely into the story. Vincent and Leo shoot their way through their army, and they wind up getting to Harvey, where they not only confront him and obtain the Black Orlov, but are also able to shoot him to death after he attempts to take one of the two hostage. We transition this to Stage 10, which is the return. And for Vincent and Leo, it's finally time to get out of Mexico and go home. There is no pacing required for this stage either. It can either be very slow or fast-paced. And in their case, it is very hectic. This stage is their escape from Harvey's territory. Reinforcements arrive, and Vincent and Leo must rush out of Mexico before they can get killed. And the army packs some serious heat. The players have a motorcycle each to work with, while Harvey's army has armed vehicles and even an entire helicopter trying to shoot them down with explosives. But eventually, Emily shows up to scoop them up with her plane, and then flies them out of there. That's good. And then finally, we get that transition to Stage 11, which is crossing the return threshold. This is where we bid farewell to the realm of adventure. And that means that we can transition to Stage 12, the final reward. But before we get there, yeah, their adventure is finished and their jobs are done. Harvey and his gang are shut down, and Leo has the Black Orlov in his possession. Emily is also flying them back to the safety of their home, out of Mexico and into the States. But I did say we were transitioning to the final reward, and I was like, what? I thought we went over this stage, the climax. And yeah, technically we did, but I did say as well that facing Harvey was the penultimate showdown. But this is where we get to the actual ultimate showdown. After Emily flies them home, they're met with the whole police force. Yeah, the police force are still after them. They ended up dealing with one faction, they still have to deal with the other. But with seemingly nowhere to run, they have to give themselves up. The police faction has finally caught up with them, and an officer walks forward to claim the Black Orlov from Leo's possession. However, this time where it's revealed that Vincent is a police officer himself, as well as Emily. Leo's whole world starts to collapse around him in the reality of this situation, and understandably he feels betrayed by Vincent. So Leo takes Vincent hostage, attempts to escape, which leads them to a warehouse. Leo steals Emily's gun, where she tries to find him in this warehouse, and Vincent confronts him. The final boss of the game was never Harvey, and it certainly wasn't a member of law enforcement you thought it would be. The final boss of the game is the friend you've been playing this game with the whole time. And on top of this, there can only be one winner. And this means that either Vincent or Leo kills the other. There is no room for compromise here. Now, for this sake, we're gonna skip over stages 10 and 11, and we're gonna skip right to the final reward. I do this because there is no more return. They've already returned home. They're back in the States, and while yes, getting back to their families does technically mean they return home, we've started this adventure in prison, so they're not going back there. Also though, crossing the threshold, we're not recrossing the return threshold again. They've already bid farewell to their whole adventure. The whole point of this game was to get the Black Orlov. We've already done and over with for all that. So now it's time for their final reward. After either player beats over the other, Vincent or Leo finally gets the things that they've always wanted. If Vincent kills Leo, he gets to return to his wife, apologizes to her for the stress he must have caused her during this whole ordeal, and reveals that he quits the police force to start anew with her. She allows him to come back into her life, and this time he has a daughter to raise together with her. But if Leo kills Vincent, then the opposite is true. Leo takes the letter that he wrote to his wife Carol and brings it to her. He only gets a glimpse of her reading it before he drives off back to his own family, with his wife Linda and his son Alex. And from there, they escape where they initially lived to start a new life elsewhere. Understandably, no matter what ending the game takes, it'll be a very bittersweet end for the both of them. Vincent will have felt regret for what they did, betraying Leo, and it hits him even harder when he had to let Linda know what he did. Leo likely feels regret for killing Vincent, especially when they had a family of his own, but he mostly reminisces about the time together they've had during the whole ordeal in the car ride to his new life. It's not exactly an ideal situation for sure, but it's the best that they have. And between the two of them, they'll at least hold what they've learned from one another to heart, I imagine. I'm gonna shoehorn this in because Vincent is the trickster. I did mention the character archetypes earlier, where Leo is the hero, but the reason why I didn't mention Vincent as a hero as well is because he is a trickster. And from here, yeah, tricksters are perhaps the most enduring character archetype, but beyond that, it's what their goals are. They might help the hero or they might hinder them, and depending on which best suits their own agenda at that time, they're going to be getting their way, or they're going to be trying to get their way. Vincent pretended to be Leo's ally so that way he can get to the Black Orlov, but when it came time to return to the world that was familiar to them, which is the States, Vincent, does that whole reveal that he's a cop. He does that whole twist villain type of thing, and he attempts to take Leo in. Now, yeah, that makes him a trickster. He was really only using Leo as a means to get to the ends. So there's that additional note there. And I did take from sources. There was a specific way to get through the hero's journey, which was in that project shell noted by my professor, but I've taken my own route instead because I watched the video called Trope Talk, A Hero's Journey, and this one was by, let's see, I believe this one was by Overly Sarcastic Productions is what the channel is. But yeah, I've taken their idea of the journey and I ran with that. And I took from a few other sources as well. But yeah, here is thank you for spending your time listening to me talk about the hero's journey, going through their initiation, their returning, going through their departure, their initiation, and then their returning from their journey, how their character archetypes kind of align with one another, how they are a foil to one another, and that bittersweet ending. Be careful with who you trust because it might turn out the same way. Thank you for your time and have a good day.